Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another video for the channel. So, as you guys still remember, back then a few weeks ago, I covered the recent news about Bleed Esports getting booted out of the VCT and how Riot Games came to the decision after taking into many things that surrounded the Bleed Esports camp. And so, with that in mind, Riot took them out of VCT and then replaced them with Boom Esports for 2025 and also beyond that. And so, I gave out my thoughts, my immediate thoughts and opinions as to what happened, why it happened, and how it will affect both parties and everyone else that are tied into it loosely for the future. And one of the things that I kind of talked about was just me giving my assumptions as to what exactly led to Riot Games reaching that decision. What are the specifics? What are the micro things that Riot looked at and said, no, there's no way we're going to allow this, and we're just going to have to take them out. And so, with that in mind, that was done not even a few hours after the news broke of their elimination from VCT. And since then, since 2 weeks after that, plenty of details, posts, and comments emerged from various people all throughout the esports industry that talks about Bleed Esports and the kind of shady practices that they've been on, and specifically in recent months, weeks. That said, I kind of want to put down the quick timeline as to exactly what went down and why we're in this situation. So think of this as a kind of part two to this situation that is still developing, still brand new as we go along. So bringing you guys back over to when this whole thing started, Riot put out a statement in October 3rd of 2024 in 11:43 p.m. detailing their statement as to why Bleed Esports had to be kicked out of the VCT. And so one of the things that two of the things that they cited as the major causes for such an announcement was Bleed Esports' failure to comply with critical reporting requirements and other key obligations under the TPA. And so, taking that into consideration, Riot Games booted them out, took them out, and replaced them with Boom Esports. And that caused plenty of outrage, or more so shock. Not long after this statement was made, the first domino would fall. This came from Kasad, Alexander Trifunovic, and more specifically, he was the head coach of Bleed Esports CS2 team. And he put out a statement a few hours after Riot Games' statement, and here it is in tweet. It's too small for you guys, but I'm giving you guys the courtesy of just kind of reading through the statement and just repeating what he said over to you guys. And so, starting out, due to the latest news and developments inside the organization, we have decided to take things publicly. After months of attempting to resolve our internal issues privately, we feel compelled to share what has transpired and is still going on. Bleed Esports upper management has consistently ignored our concerns, leaving us no choice but to go public and cut all ties with them. From the outset, we've grappled with delayed salary, up to 4 months at the time, buyout, bootcamp, and other payments. For reference, most of the players got their first salary in April, and even though they signed contracts in December. Before CQ, 4RMR Bootcamp was organized and paid 50% by Kasat and the other 50% by players. Mind you, this is normally the org's job to kind of take care of these payments, more so on the preparation side, and in addition to the salary side, obviously. But to see that Kasad, the coach, and the players had to pay their own money, it definitely gives you an idea as to the state in which they were in, that led to their predicament and led to this kind of statement being put out. And so, continuing, other organizations have confirmed that they failed to pay buyouts for several players, still not paid to this day, threatening them with legal actions and going public with the information if they don't pay. And about 60% of tournament prize money is still outstanding. So, outstanding, basically, the players that were supposed to, the team that were supposed to receive their prize money from taking part in the major events that awarded them with such money, they had not received their cut. And in addition to that, the buyouts, obviously, in order to build the team, Kasad had to buy players that were already part of other organizations, and he had to pay a fee in order to kind of unlock those players from their former org and then hop over to the Bleed team. And so, that in mind, Bleed has not been able to kind of pay those fees that enabled the players to thus be unlocked and set the stage for their transfer over to Bleed. And so for that to still not happen, it just kind of gives you an idea also on just how much more money Bleed has to owe the players and the coach. With that in mind, several times during the last 4 or 5 months, the team refused to play officials and practice weeks at the time until some of the payments were made. Multiple players from other divisions, Dota 2, Valorant, Rainbow Six, reached out to us with similar concerns, not to mention employees regularly giving notices about breaches of contract and delayed salaries. Reputation got so damaged that players refused to even consider joining Bleed, knowing all these things, and relationships got broken to the point that all people were thinking about leaving ASAP. These financial uncertainties have created significant stress, impacting our preparation, motivation, and performance. It's crucial to highlight that even in 2024, supposed tier 1 or esports organizations can struggle with basic obligations. We're utterly flabbergasted by the lack of communication from Bleed's top management. They've repeatedly lied about payments, made empty promises, and kept us hoping things will get better. Most of the time, we've been completely ignored by management, radio silence on their end. We're currently consulting with our legal team to determine our next steps and move things forward. We plan to search for an organization that can offer stability and meet the essential requirements for effectively managing a team. On top of everything, the CEO has disappeared from the face of the earth and nobody can find him. We will participate in the next two tournaments, RES Regional Champions and Thunderpick World Championship 2024 under the name Unpaid. Regards, the team and the coach. And so, as you guys can see right here, this is them being a part in one of the said competitions that Kassad put out in the statement. They are known officially with the title Unpaid, and they made out their own shirts. They brought out their empty wallets just to show exactly, hey, yeah, they're not bullshit, not lying, and this is actually the state of them. And so, hats off to them to kind of still continue playing, still continue competing despite suffering all of these obstacles. And yeah, that is the story of Unpaid. And so, reinforcing Kassad's statement is that he kind of put out an email screenshot shortly after he made the statement, basically repeating what he said on that statement, but first kind of writing it out via email to the Bleed top management back in September 2024. And so you can see right here, this is the email. This is the grievances that him and the CS team had towards the org and why things are not at the right state that it should be. He highlighted the unpaid salaries, the outstanding prize money, how it hasn't been paid to them, the unfulfilled bios that the org has yet to pay to the other orgs that allowed them to sign their current players, and just basically a lack of communication and not even fulfilling any single promise that they had from the time they put that team together. And as you can see right here, these breaches have severely impacted our morale, performance, professional standing in the esports community. Same thing, same words, same expressions, same emotions. I would say also from this to now. Not long after Kassad put out his statement, Bleed put out a statement of their own, giving an update on their CS2 team, saying that for public transparency, that roster has been paid through full, uh, all the way to August, with September salaries still in the process of being handed out to the other party. And so they've also said that they've been in constant communication, constant conversation with the people, with the players, the teams, not just in CS but also other parties, also throughout the org. And basically, they also said that they've been fully committed in ensuring that Kassad's vision for the team would be realized. But immediately after this statement was put out, Kassad put in the quote tweet in addition to other players from the team, basically with him listing out the full exact amount of money that Bleed has not still paid to himself and also the players. 130K not paid to Apex, 42K not paid to G2. The buyouts, obviously, that in mind. 100K prize money, to be exact, which he pointed out in these two statements, the email and the full statement regarding the team's exit. 50K not paid to two players, 10K not paid to one player, and then the full 20K not paid to him with all of the expenses that he made to accommodate the team with travel, boot camp, preparation, food, maybe also accommodations, having a place to stay, and all of that. Like, and then one player of that CS2 team, specifically in Cirque, discussed his experience with this entire fiasco and how much of a turmoil it really was for him and everyone else surrounding him. He said people were paid their first salary within 4 months delay. Some are still missing. All tournament prizes are missing, and the person that is the most fucked is probably Kassad, since he was paying out of pocket for most stuff since Bleed couldn't meet the deadlines for boot camps, etc. And so you got to remember that the Bleed Esports CS team was formed in January. In the last week of December 2023, they started their journey into that game by signing Kastad as the head coach, and then they let him, build his team with his vision in mind, as the org said. And so that led to them coming into agreement with Cypher, Hampus, Blad, Jacob, Nexa, and Knock. Those people, all of those people were within the Bleed Esports team for the CS side of things. And, you have that in mind. Many players are still not being paid. That team started out in January, and they had to wait until April or May to finally receive their first payment, their first month's salary. and, and you have that coupled with how rough it was for the team to prepare for the many qualifiers that came to the work, including the RMR for the Copenhagen Major. And it just goes to show how difficult of a situation they were in and how impossible it was for the team to kind of contend and fight for a spot in the major tournaments, and at the very least, with those issues affecting their mental and possibly also their physical side, uh, it, simultaneously. And of course, as it was said in Kastat's initial statement, these troubles didn't really happen to the CS team by itself. It happened to all the other orgs or all the other branches within the Bleed org itself. First off, covering R6, there was a tweet put out by Turd, an R6 player for the org, that kind of talked about his experience with the team, and he kind of said that he had to move out to another country and continue his career there. He kind of had to pay for his basic accommodations, his basic needs, while just receiving under $700 a month. And even now, he kind of points out to this very day, after being with the org for over a year, he is owed 35K, over 30K dollars USD to basically meet to be to be on par with what he is owed to, officially. He had to basically compete with that in mind, and just kind of have to put that onto the back burner and just compete in tournaments. And he even said right here, like, the Rainbow Six team was at one point one of the most successful, probably the most successful squad in the Bleed camp. And if you have that, if you have that going on, and you compare that to the CS team, which wasn't really doing all that well for obvious reasons, it just goes to show how bad it really is. How deep this rabbit hole really is, as to how many unfulfilled promises and missed payments there are within Bleed. In response to Turd's tweet, there was another player, Mikoto, of Dota 2, which was a part of the Dota 2 squad in Bleed. He gave out his own experience as to, not receiving his due payments as a result of being a member of the Bleed org. And he said that he hasn't been paid for 4 months after being with the org for 6 months. And those 2 months that he was able to get paid, he only did so 4 months into his stay. Same situation as what happened with Cirque, as to what he described in his own tweet. And Mikoto gave his own attempts to communicate with the org, the upper management that are in charge of handling the Dota 2 team. Still no progress, still silence, still basically being, still with him still being in the same situation as all the other people that I mentioned up to this point in this video. And then another story that I kind of want to put forth here is the fact that over in their Mobile Legends division, Mobile Legends is a mobile esports title that is very big in Southeast Asia. And so over there, you got a few players within that team that wasn't able to return home. Basically they were left stranded and having forced to figure out how they were able to get back home with the help of their family members and not having to do so with the help of the org. And one person right here, Hades, a caster, someone that works in talent management, he came out his story and he highlighted how two members within the Bleed team who are from the Philippines went over to a boot camp and had to return home after the conclusion of said boot camp, but they weren't able to do that because didn't basically pay for their return trips home. And fortunately, they were able to get out of that situation by having their families pay for their flight tickets home. And despite all of that, still same situation. Bleed was silent, no contact. The COO, as Hades said, left the group chat, basically left them to fend for themselves, and just basically said, it's a tough life. Just do what you gotta do. I don't got nothing to do with. I don't got nothing to do with you anymore." So you have you have the CS team not having their promises fulfilled. You have the Dota team being put in the same situation as the CS team. You have the R6 team still being in the situation as the CS team, and you even have a Mobile Legends team being put in the same situation of team, and that all thus leads to there being a lot of money owed to. I wouldn't even be shocked if they owe everybody that I haven't mentioned, in addition to those that I have mentioned, over $1 million USD. I wouldn't be surprised because this is how deep the rabbit hole is when it comes to Bleed Esports and how much payments and how tough it is for everyone that are locked into such a situation have to get out of. And so, my goodness, this only continues for further and further, which goes to show that a lot of people outside of the Bleed camp, those that were a part of the Bleed organization, have now emerged on their own and basically hinted as to them telling a story, or more so discussing about what exactly happened, revolving their experience within that org. And obviously, the one person that comes to mind about that aspect is Ye. Of course, Ye, world famous Valorant player, best player in the world in 2022, a part of Optic Gaming, almost close to winning champions, won Reykjavik, all that stuff. Uh, he got into Bleed after having a very rough 2023 in which he was infamously released from Cloud9 at the start of the year after competing in kickoff, and then he had to join a tier 2 team disguised over in NA Challengers in the tier 2 level. With that in mind, the team wasn't able to win a single game at the final split of 2023 for that team. They weren't able. They showed a little bit of promise in split one, but everything just kind of turned over to for the worst. And with Ye and the team, they weren't able to win a single win. But despite all of that, Ye was approached by Bleed. He was offered a lot of money. He joined Bleed, moved over to Pacific, tried to build a good squad in Bleed. It didn't work out in 2023 or 2024, as you guys know. He had to step away, went over to the inactive side of the Valorant squad for the rest of 2024. And Bleed overall performed as was one of the worst teams in Pacific. And so for him to just kind of pop in and say, "Hey, I might have something to talk about," it just also just to give you it also just gives you the idea as to how bad it must be for Bleed to have a player walk in, walk out, and then have them kind of have the inkling to talk about what might have happened. And assumingly such, I think he might have like a negative uh view as to what happened in Bleed. So the party just continues for Bleed, and the party's not gonna stop, it seems. Soon after the announcement was made about Bleed getting out of VCT was published, There was plenty of digging into the past of the organization and the people that were a part of the organization. And basically, it was a matter of just people having to find out what other bad things the organization and such and said people did that basically put them into that position, ultimately speaking. And so, one of the biggest points that was brought up concerning Bleed is the EFLARE tournament. And for those of you Valorant people that aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, the EFLARE event was a competition that happened in November of 2023 to kind of commemorate the launch of CS2 within Southeast Asia. And that tournament handed out $100,000 prize pool to the teams taking part. The first place team would walk out with the lion's share, obviously 50% of the total amount, 50K USD. Second place team would receive 25K. Third place team would receive 15K, and the fourth place team would receive 10K. And so, with that in mind, the tournament happened. It lasted for a few days. We got our winners. Ideally, that would have been the end of everything, with everyone being paid and everything just happening without any further issue. However, there were reports made back in June 4th, 2024, most specifically from the Esports Advocate by one James Fudge, a colleague of mine within the esports journalism space. Shout out to him. And he put out a report as to the shady dealings, or more so, the issues that happened after the tournament took place. And as per what exactly those issues are or were, basically unfulfilled payments, false promises, players not being paid in full, payments being made by cryptocurrency, and a large amount of those payments in being in cryptocurrency not being able to be accessed by those receiving it. And so, according to the report, everything started from a contact between the CEO of Bleed, Mervyn Go, and one named Chris Lin, which is a Hong Kong businessman. Not much kind of information is out there revolving who this person is and who else kind of was accompanying him in order to create this tournament. But such content was made about hosting a tournament, about EFLARE and $100,000 prize pool. Mervyn then got into contact with a former Bleed employee. Then they started doing then that team started organizing the entire event. Taking care of the logistics and the accommodations for the players. Everything was figured out. So the team was put together. Everything is done. The work is done, and now the tournament can be held. But however, obviously for obvious reasons, the employees had to be paid. Before the tournament had to happen, or else why would they even work in such a capacity at all? And so, some people were paid up front. Other people agreed to be paid after the event. And one of the people highlighted was a caster, him being Marmoon Tea Time Sabri, who is from Pakistan. Got the tournament. The tournament happened. It came off with a rousing success, no issues on the technical side. And so now it became a matter of just waiting and receiving the payments. And obviously, that didn't happen at all. There was no reports made about the lack of payments being made to the people that did the event for many months. And we had to wait until March when the Esports Advocate kind of started digging into this story. And they figured out that only one person amidst all of that by that time was paid in full regarding salary and stuff like that. That person was the CEO itself, Mervyn Go, the guy that was approached by Chris Lin and the other people to make this tournament possible. But this was only a delayed payment. The other people weren't paid in full yet, and there was a hope. There was a belief that eventually, these people will then get paid, including Tea Time. Obviously, various complaints, grievances, and messages were sent from the people awaiting their payments to Go. Eventually, such a payment would be made, but this was done by cryptocurrency. And as a matter of fact, everyone was paid in cryptocurrency. They weren't giving out the full cash, up front. They weren't given like a wire transfer of money. Instead, they were given cryptocurrency. And by the time this report was made, a month, 3 months after TEA started digging into the story, one person hadn't been paid on. That was Tea Time, and likewise, he was paid in cryptocurrency, but due to the laws within his country in Pakistan, uh, cryptocurrency is illegal, so he wasn't able to. He's unable to receive that money, and so you know he tried to reason with uh, the other party to have them give him the money, but in actual money, like in wire transfer and stuff like that. But again, they said no, and that left him in a situation where he had the money in cryptocurrency, but he couldn't really receive it. And so, where does that leave him? That leaves him with no money at all, and that just gives you an idea of how rough it was for himself and also the other people that had to wait a long time for them to receive their money. And even then, they were able to receive their money in cryptocurrency. What about Tea Time? He didn't receive his because of circumstances outside of his control. And so imagine if the other people hadn't been able to receive their money just because it is a cryptocurrency. Where does that leave everyone? Obviously penniless, and obviously a bad situation overall. And this doesn't even cover the entire players. The players themselves, not a single one of them was paid in full. Imagine that, not even being paid in full after having plenty of time to devote one's time to prepare, be at a great shape, compete, and win the tournament. And realizing that you are going to be a very rich person, but to have that not even seeing the money be paid out to you. Imagine that. Not even the winners, not even the second place, not even the third place, not even the fourth place. And this is something that uh, TEA kind of point forward in their report. Not a single one. Likewise to what happened with the support staff, the players were told to give out their information revolving their cryptocurrency wallet because they were going to be paid in cryptocurrency as well. But despite the players doing that and having to wait an additional like 2 to 3 months, they weren't even paid. By that time, when the report was made, they were still not paid. And even to this point, who knows? They still might not even be paid. They still might be waiting for a payment to be given to them, and that way they can close the chapter of that tournament and leave that behind them. So imagine that. One other interesting thing that happened is the fact that a few people within the Bleed Esports VCT team that at that time was coming off of an Ascension, a Pacific win, which gave them the chance to compete in Tier 1 for 2024. They also competed in this EFLARE event. Those of them that had their prior experience in CS and CSGO and all that stuff. So they were in the event, they took part, they were together under a different banner, but they were in a situation that they kind of didn't notify Riot beforehand about their participation. And so that got them into pretty hot water with Riot as to, their eligibility requirements. And who knows, that might have been the start of the rift between Riot and Bleed and their eventual exit from VCT. Might be the first thing to happen, but who knows. And so, with all that said about what's been going on with the Bleed Esports fiasco slash turmoil slash chaos that has been happening in recent months and weeks and even days, there's been one constant person that's been kind of present throughout each of the stories that I've been telling you about so far in this video, and that person is obviously the CEO. And I have a picture of him right here that was provided in one of the many articles that was written about his profile, and his name is Mervin Go and Wei. Uh, he was the CEO of the team from the start of the organization up until the time he left in 2024, early part of 2024. I remember there was a tweet from him about where he kind of expressed how he was having fun. He was not having fun taking in plenty of losses consecutively, and then after that he kind of uh, disappeared from social media and presumably also from from public life. And so, with that in mind, there's with the focus onto the team, onto the problems, onto the organization and onto the fact that they are no longer able to be in VCT, then the focus now goes into the behind the scenes as to upper management and why they've been so quiet, why there's been no communication at all from these people, people like Mervin, people like those that are alongside him. And so plenty of things can be said about what happened with people like him and his colleagues. But one interesting report came out from Singapore that was now reported also from like social media and Reddit and even VLR about the current whereabouts of the CEO. And as a matter of fact, in this post that was sent to the Valorant competitive subreddit, in fact, as it turns out, the CEO and an investor for the org are currently in court for an assault incident that happened on two separate occasions back in 2022 and 2023. These reports were brought up into social media and also, interestingly, on the Valorant competitive subreddit and also on VLR. And as you can see, which the VLR post, which was pointed out by one ever since triple three, there was there was two incidents that happened in a nightclub and also in a private residence that involved the CEO and one Lincoln Lim Jun Hong, an investor of the organization, as I said before. And so here is the post also from Bleed that first brought about what's going on in recent times. But if you look into the link itself that shows the report, you can see charged with entering an ex-girlfriend's home, punching guests, and earlier charged with 2022 nightclub assault. So as you can see right here, looking at the highlighted text that I have here on the screen, the investor trespassed into the home alongside Bidadari Park Drive at 1:30 a.m. on February 20, where he was said to have shouted and attacked a guest there and caused him to suffer a fracture to his left thumb. Lim allegedly punched the victim on his head, chest, and rib area. The victim raised his arms to block the attack in defense, causing him to suffer from the fracture. Lim was also charged with voluntarily causing hurt to the man. He's obviously represented by a lawyer. And the court heard that the unit he trespassed belonged to his ex-girlfriend. It is not known how Lim knew the victim and why they fought. And so trespassed in to his ex-girlfriend's compound, his ex-girlfriend's property. And even in addition to that, he was charged with voluntarily causing harm to a woman at a nightclub. And then citing over into the nightclub incident back in 2022, Lim, again, this time with the CEO, allegedly punched, kicked, and pushed a woman, resulting in her suffering from injuries. These included bruises to her left arm and right shoulder. Another prior report was published at the time this assault was made back in 2022, and you can see right here the woman that suffered from this incident and suffered from the assault that was handed out allegedly to her by Lim and the CEO. As you can see right here, black, a red eye, some bruises alongside her cheek, and the like. So right here in the report, she gives an account as to what happened. The lady whose name is Miss Leanne O'Donnell gave her account as to what happened, and as you can see in the highlighted portion, I'm going to read it to you down below. She alleged that her friend made eye contact with the person at the table in front of them when the man out of nowhere just charged towards us and punched Julia in the face. Julia is the name of the friend that she just mentioned right there. Julia is not the real name of that friend. The friend decided to remain their identity private in relation to the case. She claimed that the man then pushed her friend off the podium, which they were dancing onto the floor. After that, she's on the floor, right? The two guys started kicking her. I was not going to let them continue hitting her, Miss O'Donnell said. She then tried to intervene, but the two men allegedly pushed her and started kicking her in the face instead. Miss O'Donnell then said that she sustained some injuries to her eye, as well as several other bruises across her upper body. My right arm is completely sprained. I cannot even hold a glass up to drink water. And so after the attack, they said that they were taken to the back to, have their wounds tended. After the incident happened, O'Donnell, the lady that suffered from the attack, she saved the post that related to the incident, brought them forth to the authorities, and that then started the investigation towards Lim and the CEO of Bleed Esports, as I mentioned before. And so at the end of that investigation from the police, they now reached a point where they are going to try Mr. Lin and also the CEO to court, as it is shown here from a tweet by Bo Huglin, Bo Dorga, a colleague of mine within the Valorant competitive space, and one that worked as a journalist back in the days when he was in Blix GG in around 2022, early 2023. He showed here details as to when the court case is going to happen against him or against the CEO, which is set to happen on October 21st. And I have a link here that kind of shows the exact details of the case right here. This is provided from the Singaporean court's website, a federal website, and it shows to you the details as to what happened or what's going on in the case. You can see right here the name of the CEO right here in highlighted form, and you can see also where it's going to take place in the country and when it's going to happen, which is going to happen on October 21st in 2024, specifically on 9 a.m. over there in that country. And as I said, this relates to the domestic abuse case that happened within the nightclub that happened to the woman that I showed you of the picture some time ago. And so, yeah, both him and Mr. Lim are implicated in this case. Heading on back over to the VLR post that talked about the case, another point that this user also put out is the fact that, governmentally speaking, Bleed no longer exists. And as you can see here on the second part right here, Bleed also got struck off in September of 2023 as a registered company within within Singapore. And for those of you guys that don't know what struck off means, basically in layman terms, a company is no longer listed as an official company according to the government, and whatever activity that entity does after said striking off is officially made, then it is illegal and they are not able to continue further as a legal party. They'll be as obviously an illegal enterprise. Hey guys, Pedro here. This time I'm stuck in the little box. For this occasion, I'm kind of want to add on to what I initially said about the definition of struck off and kind of elaborate, or more so give deeper information as to that. And so when I talk about a company being struck off, it's talking about, on top of it no longer being an official company and one that can be officially listed according to the government, it also disables a company's activities in the sense of trading assets, selling assets, making payments. And this can kind of come off in two ways. You got a voluntary strike off and you got an involuntary strike off. Both of these two terms are kind of self-explanatory, but to describe it nonetheless, a voluntary strike off is a strike off for a company that no longer wants to handle the business. They no longer want to operate the business that the company is in, and so they voluntarily let the government know that they want to be struck off, and so that happens. Involuntary strike off is basically the opposite of that, in which a company is no longer working under regulations beneath a government, no longer complying with the regulations that was set forth in accordance to working with the government, and as a result, the government just decided to strike them off forcefully, just as a way to stop them and just prevent them from doing any more damage to people that they're affecting. And so, as per exactly which of these two things kind of happened for Bleed Esports, it doesn't really say officially, but the one thing that is clear is that it was struck off, and that this disabled their ability of making payments. And when one puts that into focus, then one might also think that that also explains to why Bleed Esports wasn't able to make any sort of payments, or was only able to do any payments at all, but at a delayed fashion for all of 2024. Just the fact that that kind of um, measure just basically led to the things that it is right now. So, just adding a little bit of a caveat to that. So, signing off and continue on with the video. And so, this happened in September 2023 for Bleed Esports as the organization itself. And around that time, that was when Bleed Esports won Ascension. That was when they got the okay to get into Tier 1. And you can see right here a link was provided about the a link was provided as to when exactly Bleed got struck off, in addition to the many other companies that were also struck off before, during, and even after said time happened. And here is the official website from the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, which is an agency within the Singaporean government. And scrolling down over to the September listings, you'll see right here Bleed Esports LTE Ltd. No, Bleed Esports PTE Ltd. In September, early September of 2023, they are no longer an official company, a legal company. They are struck off as a company, and so whatever Bleed Esports does after that point, it will not be legal. And of course, if you guys know already, they did do things after 2023, so much so that they continued operating as a full-fledged esports company, and one that continued diving into other parties, other games, and signing other players with the hopes of just seeing them be successful. And I'm not sure about you guys, but maybe this might not be legal. If you guys understand, what I'm trying to allude to here. And another red flag, another bad thing that that pertains to the Bleed Esports org slash name. But even so, they continue to operate. And as I said, moving over to Valorant, continuing in Valorant, so much so that they continued being put into VCT for Pacific in 2024. And it just goes to show you, like, what exactly did Riot look at? And it just goes to show you exactly what kind of things did Bleed do that enabled it to continue to sustain itself and continue to operate as an organization from that point all the way into the present. And in addition to that, one other point that I also want to bring up is what exactly did Riot do to kind of ensure that Bleed would be a viable party heading into the 2024 season? Because at around that same time, you saw another org fold and decided to fold and not continue to operate officially. That was the Guard. And soon after that org won Ascension Americas, they did not sign anything from Riot relating to the TPA that officially put them into VCT Americas Tier 1. And so you look at that, you look at what happened, you look at Bleed, and they still decided to join VCT Pacific for 2024. And it just goes to show you exactly what are the things that Riot looked at, and maybe also the kind of things that Riot didn't look at or wasn't able to oversee that allowed Bleed to continue forward and compete in 2024. So a lot of question marks that goes into just looking into this striking off incident and the effects it might bring to what happens after this is all said and done, and how this might implicate the people that were in charge of the organization from that point onwards, which thus brings us to the matter of like compensation. So if you have all of this going on within the organization, you have this organization continue to dish out money to players like EA, to players like the Dota 2 team, to the players like the CS2 team that started around the same time, at the same time, that started around at the same time as all of these three people that I kind of pointed out simultaneously. Then it just brings you the question exactly: who's even running the books? Like, who's even like managing the money? Like, who is even in charge of like making this entire operation possible from the outset. And when you have this going on, then one has to wonder that, like, surely enough, this might also head over into the criminal territory as to, you know, dealings and what one has to do in order to make that happen, right? Because this has been going on for a year since uh, Bleed no longer was a viable and official company. And one has to wonder, like, what exactly did they do? What kind of operations are the people that were in charge of continuing the Bleed Esports name doing to make this, to keep the lights running? Because all I know is that after Riot said goodbye to Bleed from VCT, then everybody started to get into what exactly is going on in Bleed Esports. But even then, like, getting into exact where's the money come from question, finding out exactly what is going on within that aspect, that is also a question that remains to be answered. Which just puts us back into the attention of the CEO, one Mervin Go, and such a question as to what exactly he does with the phantom money, I kind of presume, comes into focus also because, like, this kind of question was brought up also from another very long and deep post provided by a Reddit user within the R6 Pro League subreddit, which comes by the name of Drag Me Home Now, and they kind of pointed out how about the question of exactly where is the money coming from when it comes to Mervin Go, and he put out 2 points that either Mervin started out a new company by himself or with the collaboration of other people, or more so he's doing everything by himself, literally, like this being a one-man enterprise of just him handling all of the money, handling all of the paperwork, and him handling over all of the logistics and everything besides that, in the name of Bleed Esports, and obviously handling a lot of money. Eventually that money's going to run out because, as I said, possible amounts of money owed might be to the millions, and if it's one person kind of handling everything, I don't think they will be able to handle everything unless they're uber rich. But that's just exactly how I handled Forbleed, with essentially the money running out and with the money being no more, and it being no longer present for the Bleed org to kind of continue to pay to the players and to the support staff. Then one reason became the obvious for those in charge of that facet. Basically, run out, get out of there, bail, and make sure that no one looks towards your way when it comes to figuring out what happened in the future. But even so, that isn't to say that the CEO himself is not that wealthy. He has shown to be someone that is very wealthy and one that has supposedly high prestige within the cybersecurity scene. As a matter of fact, there was a tweet pointed out by one of my colleagues over from Counter Strike, one being Jeff M&M's, that that founded 13 articles that served as profile pieces as to the work that he's done and the work that he hopes to do, specifically within the tech slash cybersecurity side of things. And that kind of helped him gain an appeal, gain a profile, and just help him set the stage for him to eventually get into the esports scene. And that just goes to show exactly how much he put in as to build his profile, have a lot of money, have a lot of money before starting the Bleed Esports a name org, and also continuing that all the way into the very end at this moment in time. And interestingly enough, I'm going to show you guys one particular article that was written by Forbes itself that describes the CEO's work and what kind of advice he has to give towards anyone that was like looking to get into his line of work. So the article says right here that Go is a cybersecurity expert and an ethical hacker who was once a bad hacker, but now he has basically put on the Robin Hood hat and is now working for the good, working for the poor, and working for what is best for society and for humanity. You get what I'm trying to say, but it's interesting to see him, have an article piece for him when in reality, when it comes to looking to exactly what he does and what kind of companies he works for, it's pretty still, it remains to be seen. I've looked into exactly everywhere as to what he does and the work he does, besides, covering Bleed Esports, but so far nothing about cybersecurity, nothing about being a hacker, nothing about uh, uh, any employment besides his time in esports. And as you can see, there are other articles right here that is basically the same way as what uh it's basically done in the same way that paints the CEO in a positive light, but it's one in which very peculiar in the sense that these articles were published in fairly unknown, fairly obscure websites, and one that have bases in Africa for some reason, one in Asia, one in the United Kingdom, one in Israel, Nigeria. It just goes to show that he might have just looked at whatever publication is out there that can accept like a payment and have to do a piece about him and just put him in a positive light. Of course, supposition, just an assumption, but it's not really hard to imagine that kind of thing happening in real life when it comes to looking at him. With all of the things that have been happening about Bleed Esports, the CEO, and how basically everyone has kind of jumped off the ship for that org, the question now revolves around what's next for everyone involved. I don't know. One thing I could say is I don't know. One thing is for sure is that Bleed will forever be regarded as a story to not follow. And I say that in the sense that if you want to be good in esports, if you want to have a sustainable org, if you want to have an org that contributes to the scene in a beneficial way, not just for the org but for everything around them, uh, you having a lot of money at once, paying it out to every person you see and every title you see, and not focusing on the future and just seeing that money dry itself out and then having to disappear to avoid making payments and not have to deal with any of the consequences after that. That is not the way to go. That is not the way to go. But unfortunately, that is a story that has been played out so many times in so many ways for so many years. A lot of my colleagues have talked about it. A lot of other esports journalists have talked about, and unfortunately, due to it happening basically today with Bleed Esports, one has to think that such a thing is going to happen in the future when a new org comes out of nowhere with a lot of money to be dish out and they try to do their own thing. One thing I kind of want to finish up with is an article that was published within the entrepreneur.com website, and it was a short profile piece on Bleed Esports and how it's paving the way for Singaporean success. And you look at the date right here, September 6th in 2023. Around that time in September 6th, around early September, Bleed wasn't even an official company anymore. They were struck off. They, in all senses, were an illegal enterprise, and basically whatever they did after that was done by the work of one man or basically one small group of people with a lot of money to hand out. And you see that, you juxtapose that with the future, or aka right now, it just shows how slimy, how bad, how heartbreaking this is to the victims that have suffered from this whole fiasco, this whole chaos. And with that said, I can only hope that everyone that I talk to, they can have their happy ending in due time, preferably not far into the future, but more so as soon as possible. So yeah, that kind of wraps up all the things that I have to say for Bleed. This has been Pedro Romero once again, chronicling everything. Apologies if I rambled for an hour. But this is one thing that I had to do. So that said, Pedro Romero, thank you so much. See you guys in the next one.